everybody, Sam Amico, Hoops Wire Live, here on 330 to go from hoopswire.com, of course. Been a couple of exciting days in my own personal life, and for fans of the Cavaliers, I would imagine that would be the case for you too. We have a couple of preseason games, which you can't really take much away from those, but we still got to see the Cavs in action. I think, okay, let's start with Tuesday. I think a lot of fans were excited about that, the way the starters played first Tuesday, or first game against Chicago Bulls in Cleveland. Cavs have 4 preseason games. Chicago, Indiana on Thursday, which we'll cover that too, because the only starter who played was Jarrett Allen. I got a funny story about that. And now they're off for a week. They take the next 2 days off practice. If you're watching this live or close to live, they're off practice Friday and Saturday, and then they get back on the court, and they don't play another preseason game until Thursday. I believe that's October 17th. They're at Detroit, so they get to face JB Bickerstaff and the Detroit Pistons. And then 2 nights later, they wrap up the preseason at Chicago. And then they got about a week off before the start of the regular season. So we're getting close, which is good, because nothing better for me than the preseason, than the regular season, right? I'd rather have regular season basketball. So, but here we are. And I thought the first 2 days, or the first 2 games, there were some very promising things. And I would say that particularly about the first game, where all 5 starters did play under Kenny Atkinson. And we've heard all training camp that the ball's going to move. People are going to move. There's going to be more passing and more cutting. Offensively, defensively, the Cavs hope to stay the same. Evan Mobley's going to be way more involved. I kept saying during the offseason, after Kenny Atkinson got the job, that Evan Mobley was pretty much the reason he got the job. And the fact that his plan was to get Evan Mobley to another level. His plan was to get Darius Garland back to who he was a couple years ago after last year's rocky season. And the first game, now granted, preseason game, but the first game I saw a lot of differences in the Cavs. Number one, I think familiarity is going to help them. The fact that they didn't make any big splashy moves, they tried to make a couple of moves, just couldn't do it, and didn't want to break up their core to do it. So I thought that first game was very promising. The Cavs looked very comfortable. Darius Garland looked like his old self. And lo and behold, the very first play of the preseason was run for Evan Mobley, and he delivered. He got the ball in a good position. He made a move. He scored a bucket. He finished that preseason game 19 minutes, I believe he played, and finished with 19 points and 14 rebounds. So, can't beat that type of performance and his defensive performance. I'm sorry, 19 points and 9 of 14 shooting. I don't think he had 14 rebounds. I might have misspoke there. And usually I'm like a, walking, talking box score. But I think he had like 6-7 rebounds. Everybody looked really good that first preseason game among the starters. And, now we can't take much away from that, except for the fact that the Cavs just happen to talk about or deliver everything they talked about at training camp, right? They talked about how the ball was going to move and that there were going to be different shots available for the players, and that the offense was going to, have a better shot at clicking on a consistent basis. In 16 minutes, well, in about 5-10 minutes, actually, of actual game time, we saw those things come to life. All the X's and O's on Kenny Atkinson's chalkboard jumped onto the court and came to life. So I think that's very promising. Right now, okay, what we also have seen in the preseason, game number 2, 5 of the 6 top players didn't play. Max Strus has a hip bruise, a bruised hip. It's nothing serious. Sam Merrill had wrist soreness. We asked Kenny Atkinson after the game. This is after the second preseason game. If either one of those are a big concern, and he said, "I don't think so." So it was just more or less precautionary preseason game. And then Kenny Atkinson opted to sit out. Originally, opted to sit out all 5 starters. So no Mitchell, no Garland, no Strus, who's injured, slightly injured, no Evan Mobley, no Jarrett Allen. Well, Kenny Atkinson told us that. And then like 5 minutes later, they came back, the Cavs PR staff came back to us and said, Jarrett Allen's playing. No reason given, just said Jarrett Allen's playing. So we asked after the game, why did Jarrett Allen play? Kenny Atkinson said, because he wanted to. He's like, I didn't want him to. But he said, Coach, I need to get into a rhythm. Jarrett Allen told Kenny Atkinson, I need to get into a rhythm. Kenny Atkinson was laughing at all this. He said, this is how the NBA works. And I said, Jarrett, you have 82 games to get into a rhythm, talking about the regular season. And so Kenny Atkinson eventually conceded, and you could tell he was happy that his center insisted on playing as starting center. So Jarrett Allen ran out there with Ty Jerome, Isaac Okoro, Jalen Tyson, the rookie. And who else do we have? Dean Wade. And so Karis LeVert didn't play either. He looked good in game 1. And I think that that's the Cavs, kind of concern a little bit to me. The one area where I find a little bit of concern is the bench. How, now look, bench players, guys off the bench are expected to be kind of inconsistent. But I think that the Cavs really need some shooting off the bench. And that's where Sam Merrill comes in. You know what I found real interesting is it seems to me like George Niang and Sam Merrill are probably the 11th and 12th men, which, they were a very regular part of the rotation last year. At least Merrill was when he was healthy and Darius Garland was down. I think Merrill even started a few games. But, it's all going to depend. Kenny Atkinson has made it clear. It's all going to depend on matchups. And when Kenny Atkinson was the head coach of the Nets, he usually would play 10 guys. So, off the Cavs bench, after your starting 5 of Mitchell, Garland, Strus, Mobley, and Allen, Kenny Atkinson made the old hockey substitution in that first preseason game where you just substitute in an entire line, 5 guys, and take the starting 5 out, which you're not going to see in the regular season. But he wanted to get all these reserves time. And that was, Tristan Thompson, Isaac Okoro, Karis LeVert, Ty Jerome, and we're going to talk. I talked to Ty Jerome last night, so we're going to talk to him about him a little bit in a second. And Dean Wade. So those were your 5 off the bench, and then you had Sam Merrill and George Niang come in. So those were your top 12 right there. Okay, and I think that's how it's going to go into the season. Now, what about Jalen Tyson, the rookie? Right now, he's probably the 13th man. And Kenny Atkinson talked about him. He had a nice game against the Pacers on Thursday. Jalen Tyson, 11 points. I think he had 6 or 7 rebounds, 4 assists, was 5 of 7 shooting. And afterwards, Kenny Atkinson said, after the game, I asked about Jalen Tyson, and he said, he's a find a way kind of guy. He's a battler. He's a guy who's going to have some promise, has already showing promise. He said he's really putting some pressure on the guys who are a regular part of the rotation, which says a lot considering he's only like 2 weeks into his NBA career, if you don't count Summer League. So, and Kenny Atkinson brought up the Cleveland charge of the G League. He said, he's probably going to spend some time down there. So, I think that the top 12 are set. You usually only play 10. That's tough. In an NBA game to play 12 is really tough when there's only 48 minutes and your starters want to play the whole game. You can't let them play the whole game, but they want to. And a guy like Karis LeVert, frankly, Karis LeVert, Isaac Okoro, and Dean Wade, those guys expect minutes. Ty Jerome expects minutes. There's 9 guys right there who expect minutes. Somebody's going to get left on the cutting room floor. And I think more often than not, that's going to be the likes of, Tristan Thompson's going to have to play because you need a backup big man. The Ty Jerome's going to have to play because you need backup point guard and shooting guard. He'll play both spots, which Kenny Atkinson said he's going to play both spots. So I talked to Ty Jerome after the game. He said, I'm still getting my legs under me. He struggled shooting the ball in the preseason. He went like 3 of 4 in the second half last night. Until then, he was like 4 of 18 in the 2 preseason games from the field, which nobody's shooting the ball well, really, across the league. Because as Kenny Atkinson said, everybody has training camp and off-season legs still. Ty Jerome, for instance, though, missed all of last year after ankle surgery. So, I asked Ty Jerome, first of all, about last year, and he said, I'll quote him, he said, it sucked. There's no other way to put it. I wanted to be out there, and I missed an entire year of playing basketball, which is my livelihood. And he said his line was not to throw a pity party, but it was no fun. It was no fun sitting around watching. So he said it's really exciting to be back and having an opportunity to be really the first guard off the bench, other than unless you count Karis LeVert as a guard, which, he's kind of a guard, small forward. But really, Ty Jerome be the primary ball handler off the bench. So, they're looking at him to knock down shots. They're looking at him to knock down shots. Sam Merrill, I'm talking about bench guys to knock down shots. George Niang to knock down shots. Kenny Atkinson text George Niang before the Pacers game, and said, I know you're not hitting shots. Don't worry about it. I need you to be kind of a connector for all the guys in terms of, just being kind of that quote unquote garbage pail guy. And that's what George Niang does. And Kenny Atkinson said, look, guys want to make shots, right? That's, if you're a basketball player, your entire game revolves kind of around your ability to make shots. And George Niang came out and went 5 of 9 against the Pacers. And I think that, the message was maybe Kenny Atkinson took some of the pressure off of him and said, don't worry about it. Just keep shooting. Don't worry about it. And just play the rest of the game well. So that said, I know, I have to battle fans every year on whether or not George Niang is a contributor. Bottom line is he is, but he's probably going to be your 10th, 11th man. The key is he going to play well in the minutes he does get? We all know injuries occur. So is he going to contribute in that sense? Same thing with Sam Merrill. You're going to get an opportunity at some of those type of things. So those guys will be valuable when their name is called. They're going to count for a lot. Craig Porter Jr., same thing. Was forced into minutes last year, did a nice job. Probably going to spend most of his time with the Charge. At least, once the Charge get rolling, you're going to have Craig Porter Jr. down there, Luke Travers, who's looked good in the preseason, JT Thor, who's looked good when he got an opportunity, and Amani Bates, who hasn't played because he's injured. So I think that those guys are all, fans get excited about them, and those are reasons to be excited. But the bottom line is you're going to be victims of a numbers crunch. And those players, the Cavs don't have those players to contribute right now. They have those players to keep around, develop, and when the time comes, have them ready. Because, we all know about injuries, and you've got to plan for the future. And that's what guys like Luke Travers, JT Thor, Craig Porter Jr., Amani Bates are for. So, I would say overall, though, that those guys all have looked good. Everybody's looked pretty good. I haven't seen anybody who's looked bad. Like I said, George Yang struggled. Ty Jerome really is a big key to the preseason. Kenny Atkinson has said, I want to make sure he's getting minutes because he missed all of last year. I'm sure he's still kind of getting his way back into NBA shape and game shape. There's a difference. Everybody will tell you there's a difference between practice shape and game shape. And that's what they're working on with Ty Jerome. So there's a lot to digest in just a couple of preseason games. But number one, I would say, the biggest promise was what we saw out of Evan Mobley. If he plays like that consistently on offense, he has a good shot at being an all-star, and the Cavs have a good shot at going places. It's just the way it is. That's not hyperbole. That's how good he looked, and how comfortable he looked. That's the key word here that I keep using in my columns on hoopswire.com about the Cavs. Comfortable. Everyone looks comfortable, and I'm not just talking about the games. I'm talking about the practices, the locker room. Guys seem in a great mood. I got a couple locker room stories that I promised to share. Well, one. I will say this. When I go in the locker room, and it's early, but, and look, Kenny Atkinson has come out and said, there's going to be tough times. You don't play an 82-game season without some tough times, without those difficult stretches. And he said, so it's great now, but there's going to be tough times ahead. I promise. He's like, I've been around the NBA long enough to know that you're either going to have some injuries during the regular season, you're going to hit a lull, you're going to hit a wall, you're going to lose a few in a row. And he's like, that's what makes the team. How do you get through that? How do you overcome that? And how do you handle that adversity that is surely on its way? Now, you hope that it's just a short stretch, right? But it's going to happen. You don't have 82-game season and not have some kind of Even the 73-9 Warriors experienced an Even the Michael Jordan Chicago Bulls had those. So, and the 66-16 Cavs did too. So it's how do you get through that? Can you get through it drama-free? Without a lot of finger pointing, without a lot of guys like me tweeting out rumors about your team, that's when it is. But going back to my point, going in the locker room, the vibe, the culture is very positive. I get the sense that the guys really like Kenny Atkinson, trust him. And look, Kenny Atkinson's an NBA guy. It's not like they went out and got John Beeline again and some college coach who's trying to figure out the NBA on the fly. Kenny Atkinson's been in the NBA a long time. Former point guard at Richmond, by the way. He's a former Richmond Spider. I think he played professionally overseas, Kenny Atkinson. He's my age. Great shape. I want to ask him, Coach, what's your plan? I don't care about the team right now. What do you do to stay in such great shape? But I have not asked him that yet. He did say during the pregame yesterday, he had to break early to go watch Gilmore Academy soccer. So he needed to get out of the media room so he could go live stream Gilmore soccer. I told him that's not in the 330 to go code, so area code. So, and not only that, my senior year of high school in basketball, we played Gilmore Academy in the state tournament and won. I wouldn't bring it up if we didn't win, right? And I'm pretty sure we were down at halftime and they were talking trash. I think they're called the Lancers. Great school. This was many years ago, back when we did our homework on chisel and granite. But I remember that, playing Gilmore Academy in basketball. Of course, I went CVCA, was very honored to be on the live stream of the CVCA alumni night game. Steve, my pal from 330 to go, was there recording it. I have it on my personal Facebook page. Was very honored to go back. So I'm getting a little sidetracked, as I often do on this show. But I think overall the Cavaliers have a lot of promise. And when I go in the locker room, that speaks volumes. Been in the locker room 2 or 3 times, and it's just, guys are having a good time. Now it's preseason, it's early, all that, I know. But still, I see just the camaraderie and kind of the belief and the hope and the fun. And I thought that's big. Believe it or not, in the NBA, it's big having fun. Back in 2014, when David Griffin became the Cavs GM, I said, "What are you hoping to accomplish here?" And he said, "For the first thing I want to start, I want us to have fun. It's basketball. I want us to have fun. It gets left out." And guess what? David Griffin, obviously one of the top general managers in Cleveland Cavaliers history. Fun counts for a lot. I've been in a lot of locker rooms that haven't been fun. And guess what? it reflects quickly on the court. And this is not a shot at John Beilein. It was just a bad mix of the head coach and the team. Those Cavs did not have fun. And that was evident right away. I don't have fun when I don't have a sip of coffee either. So I will say this. There's just a lot of joy, a lot of ball movement, a lot of hope, a lot of promise. Yes, I know the Eastern Conference has gotten tougher, but I don't think that's all you can do is worry about yourselves if you're the Cavs. And I think that they have every reason to believe. Look, to me, the Cavs would have been, if they had been in the Pacers bracket last year, and the Cavs could have stayed at least Donovan Mitchell healthy in the playoffs, Cavs would have been in the Eastern Conference Finals. It's not a knock against the Pacers. It's just what I believe. They got the benefit of a lot of really injury-prone teams to get to the East Finals. We'd be having a different conversation today, right? Pacers fans are really excited. Hey, we got to the East Finals. I think Cavs fans are less excited because they didn't. But guess who the Cavs lost to in the second round? The eventual world champs, Boston Celtics. The Cavs didn't have Jarrett Allen at all that series, and didn't have Donovan Mitchell for part of it, and didn't have Karis LeVert for a game. So, I'm not saying that all those guys would have meant that the Cavs would win that series, because I don't think it would have. But I think that there are reasons that there are reasons that the Indiana Pacers got to the Eastern Conference Finals, and kudos to them, and the Cavs did not. And it's not just because it doesn't mean the Pacers are a better team. It's, there are other things. Kenny Atkinson said that. He said it right from training camp. You not only need to be good, you got to have some good bounces and luck along the way, and that includes good health when it means the most. So, Pacers had that. Cavs did not. Pacers had favorable playoff matchups. Cavs did not. So I don't think there's anything wrong with running it back. See how it goes. They got all the way to February to make a trade if it's not going great, but I think it's going to go pretty well. I do think that the Cavs need some more. They need Strus. They need Merrill. They need Karis LeVert, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell. They need those guys to knock down perimeter shots. Because Evan Mobley's life is going to be very difficult if they do not. That's the one area that the Cavs may not match up with other teams that are, want to contend. The perimeter shooting, to me, looks a little bit iffy. A little bit. Not terribly. A little bit. But again, do you need to go out and find somebody to fix that? And is that somebody going to take minutes from somebody else? These are questions that can only be answered during the season. But right now, good to go. Let's get the regular season started. Kenny Atkinson, by the way, has said probably in Detroit and Chicago, sounds like the regulars and the starters are at least going to play a little bit for those final 2 preseason games. Then the Cavs go to Toronto to open the regular season. I believe that's the 25th, 24th. I'll have to check the schedule. or you can check the schedule. Google. Here's some free advice you won't get anywhere else. Google the words Cavs schedule. It'll pop right up. I know, it's magic. It's magic. But anyway, they open at Toronto. Then they open the home opener against JB Bickerstaff and the Pistons 2 nights later. So should be exciting. I've seen a couple of JB interviews out of Detroit. A couple of my buddies are Pistons beat writers. And yeah, they say he's great to deal with. And of course he was. If you're a media member, fantastic. Fantastic. You could ask JB anything and he would not get mad. Sometimes we would ask him stuff just to see if he'd get mad, and he wouldn't. Sometimes you get bored in the media too. The long days of the regular season. The other thing I was going to tell you is, okay, so I went in the locker room. Speaking of reporters and media, I went in the locker room after the Pacers game. All right. Before I get to that, that's your teaser. I went in the locker room after Pacers game and something funny happened. But before I get to that, Enrique Freeman from the University of Akron played for the Pacers, two-way player for the Pacers, going to spend a lot of time in the G League, came to Cleveland, had a whole contingent. The Akron U basketball team, one of the reporters came up, Marla Ridenour from the Beacon Journal, and showed me a picture of Enrique before the game that she took. She has a big story on him coming out. And she took a picture, and it was Enrique standing on the court, and behind him was like everybody he ever knew. You know, they were all at the game. Akron U basketball team. People from, you know, he's a Cleveland native, Cleveland product. There was a lot of people and supporters. Enrique had a nice game, 9 points, 8 rebounds, I think, in 16 minutes before exiting with a cramp. But he hit a corner three. Okay, there wasn't a lot of people at this Cavs Pacers preseason game because the Guardians were playing at the same time in an elimination game. It was a must-win elimination game, and so they were playing, and Enrique hit a three from the corner, and I mean, it was like the loudest ovation for anyone of the night. And just really battling, and Rick Carlisle and the other Pacers players that talked about Enrique after the game, you know, they just offered him high praise and said this is the guy he was at Akron. I think he's a little more comfortable in that arena because that's where the Akron MAC tournament games are at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. But yeah, just came out, played really well, really great kid. And you see what kind of future he has. He's one of those combo forwards that can do, play a little power forward, play a little small forward. Really doesn't have a true position, but really battles and finds ways to get things done. So kudos to Enrique, and what a great kid from a great family. So anyway, went into the locker room. Now wrap it up with this. After the game, as I always do, and Tristan Thompson is walking into the training area, puts his hand on my shoulder. Now, Tristan and I have had a long, we've both been with the Cavs, I've been covering the Cavs since 2007. He's been with the team since 2011. So if there's one player that I always have a pretty good rapport with, it's been Tristan. Because number one, because he's just a personable, nice guy. Number two, because so am I most of the time. And number three, just because we've been around, So I'm like one of the senior statesmen of the Cavs media crew, as is Bob Finan, who I, of course, had on this show before, of the Medina Gazette, Elyria Chronicle, Telegram. I saw Tristan. He's walking in the training room. He said, "Hey, how you doing?" Put his hand on my shoulder. "Good to see you." And then he's walking toward the training room, turns around and goes, "Hey, I read what you wrote. You were wrong about the Cavs not wanting to re-sign me." And I said, "That's not what I wrote." And I said, "First of all, you read?" He's like, "Yeah." And then somebody from the Cavs PR staff was like, "Oh, yeah, he reads everything." He doesn't miss a thing. So I said, well, knowing that now, I'm going to have nothing but articles that rip Tristan. But anyway, he said, um, you know, how am I supposed to believe you? Because you wrote that the Cavs weren't going to re-sign Tristan Thompson, and now here I am. And he was laughing and having a good time. And then he said, I'm just kidding. I love your stuff. I'm just giving you a hard time. And I said, look, Tristan, I've been wrong before. First of all, that's not what I wrote. I wrote that they're probably not going to re-sign you. There's a key word there. Probably. Either way, I'm glad. I said, I'm glad nonetheless you take what I say as gospel. So, but he said he was just kidding around. Great, had a great time. And Tristan and I have we've had many, many tales. He'll walk past me in the media room. I go, hey, got any NBA rumors? You got any rumors? What's going on? So I'm like, every rumor I have, I put on the website. He's like, oh yeah. Sorry for asking. So he's a lot of fun, but had to point out that I was wrong about him not re-signing, and I tried to defend myself, and he really wasn't hearing it. But it was all a good time. It's all a good time, and I think that's I've been in there before, where things weren't going well. Couple years ago, I guess it was during the John Beeline era, and I walked over to interview Tristan. He's like, "Oh, Sam's here. I guess we're in trouble now." And he was down. I was like, "No, why would you be in trouble?" He's like, "Well, we're not playing well, and I figure you're going to write that." I'm like, "Yeah, I am going to write. If you don't play well, I have nothing else to write. I can't write that you're playing well, right?" I use the word "right" there too much. And the word right has so many meanings and can be spelled the same and still have so many different meanings. These are the things you learn as a writer. And on that note, I think Steve's like cutting me off right now. So before he does that, many more weeks until the regular season. And by many more, I mean 2. And then we'll have 82 games regular season. Trust me, there's going to be those Tuesday nights in January in a snowstorm when the Memphis Grizzlies are in town. Those are the dog days of the NBA season. I think this team is as prepared as any team I've seen since the LeBron James era to get through those kind of dog days, those stretches where no one's excited. Right? You're at the point where it's like, okay, we're at the 50 game mark. We feel spent. We got 32 games left, and we got a no-name team in town. I think that this team's prepared to handle this, because that's really how you have to come out. You look at the 73-9 Warriors. You look at the 66-16 Cavs. What was it? 69 and the 73-9 Warriors, it was 69-13 Chicago Bulls. Those teams, that's how you get to those type of records. That's how you get the number 2 seed or number 1 seed in the conference, getting through those dog days. And I think that this team, after having covered the NBA for now 17 years, that to me is such a huge key, because these races are going to be so tight in both conferences. They play 82 games. It doesn't matter. Every game counts now, because the difference between the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seeds, 6 seeds avoiding the playoff tournament could be 3 games. So you gotta try to win as many as you can. You got to get through those dog days. And I think that this Cavs team has a coach and has the team to be able to do it. Now they just need good health and need consistency from their bench. So before I go any further, I wanted to say thanks so much for joining us all the time. And there's plenty more to come. Plenty more to come here on 330 to go on Hoops Wire Live. So before I start rambling on again, thanks so much for joining, and we will talk to you next week. See you then.